Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lancaster County Planning Commission, December 18th, 2024. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, are available online or at the Planning Department, room 213. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, commissioners and the staff, cell phones may not be used in the chamber during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. Please note that the Planning Commission action today is final on the following items: 1.2, Special Permit 24038, 5.1, Special Permit 24009, 5.2, County Special Permit 24036. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or to the County Board by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to the City Council or the County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held December 4th, 2024.
So moved, Campbell.
Second, Fight.
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Abstain.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Minutes approved 5-0.
We will now proceed with today's agenda. The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will ask Shelley to read all of the consent agenda items into the record, and once those items are read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would then ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Shelley, will you please call the items on the consent agenda?
Item 1.1, Comprehensive Plan Amendment 24006, to amend the Lancaster County 2050 Comprehensive Plan to add approximately 193 acres to the 2050 future service limit, move the same area from Tier 3 to Tier 1 Priority B on the Priority Growth Areas map, and change the future land use map for the area from agricultural to urban residential on property generally located at South 84th and a half a mile south of Roca B Road. Next item, 1.2, Special Permit 24038 for the existing H4 planned service commercial to permit 167,000 square feet of commercial space on approximately 18 acres with an associated waiver to the LMC design standards for sanitary sewers on property generally located at west of South 14th Street and north of South Tilla Road, and this is final action. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
No.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting these sites to be disclosed?
No, there is not.
If there is anyone here wishing to speak on these consent agenda items, please stand and state that item.
Okay, we don't see anyone here that would like to speak on the consent agenda items, so we will now entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I am moved to approve the consent agenda, Campbell.
Second, Fight.
Ball,
Excuse me. Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Consent agenda approved 6-0.
We will now proceed to public hearings. Prior to staff making a brief presentation, each staff person should state their name, agency, and address. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members and or included as part of the record, please provide them to the clerk. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak unless additional time is requested and granted. The clerk will use the light system to help aid your timing for your testimony. The lights will appear on the monitors provided, and the clerk will indicate when you have 1 minute remaining so that you can wrap up your testimony. The red light indicates your 5 minutes has expired. Once the final minute has lapsed, the clerk will indicate that your time is up. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the commission votes to defer action or to continue the public hearing. Shelley, please call the first public hearing item.
Yes, item 4.1A, text amendment 24012, to amend the Lancaster County zoning regulations, Article 2 definitions, Article 4005 permitted conditional uses, Article 4.007 permitted special uses, and Article 13 special permits by adding a new definition for annual attraction event, changing agricultural attraction from a conditional to special permitted use with conditions, removing amusement license, and adding as a conditional use annual attraction event. And item 4.1B, text amendment 24013, to amend the Lincoln Municipal Code 27.02.020A definitions, 27.06.060 agricultural use group, 27.06.150 commercial recreation and entertainment facilities use group, 27.62.030 agricultural use group, 27.62.120 commercial recreation and entertainment facilities use group, and 27.63 special permits by adding a new definition for annual attraction event, changing agricultural attraction from a conditional to special permitted use with conditions, removing amusement license, and adding as conditional use annual attraction event. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these applications?
No.
George Wesselhoff, Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. Good afternoon. These two ordinances or text amendments are related. There's a county version and a city version. And what brought this forth was the state repealed the use of the amusement license in a past legislative session, and that repeal became effective July 18 of this year. The requirement to obtain an amusement license is currently found in both the Lancaster County zoning regulations and the Lincoln zoning ordinance. And so the county board discussed this and this summer and directed us to proceed with amendment that would do two things. It would keep the limit of one event per year for the uses which are not agricultural attractions, which I'll read the definition of here shortly, with registration of the event by the county clerk for tracking purposes. So there would not be a permit per se, it would just be registration for tracking. And then secondly, the creation of a special permit for agricultural attraction, which is currently a conditional use in the both sets of regulations. This would allow for review and public input on the scale of the proposed facility. And so statistically speaking, amusement licenses were approved by the county board, 7 each year in 2022 and 2023. There were 3 approved in the Lincoln 3 Mile in 2022 and 4 in 2023. It's roughly a 50-50 split in terms of Lincoln 3 Mile and county jurisdiction. There was 1 amusement license that was approved in 2023 in the Roca 1 Mile zoning jurisdiction for Rocaberry Farm. The regulations, both in the county and the city, define agricultural attraction as a premises used primarily for agriculture for the purpose of raising and harvesting crops for sale, but that also includes a limited amount of area devoted to the provision of entertainment for a period of no more than 4 months per year. Examples of agricultural attractions include, but are not limited to, pumpkin patch, apple orchard, or corn maze, where in addition to agricultural production, there are areas for the sale of other goods and entertainment. An agricultural attraction may operate up to 4 months a year, whereas under the current zoning regulation, the amusement license event, which is not an agricultural attraction, is allowed once per year. It should be noted that private events where the general public is not invited are not considered as uses that would fall under what is now the amusement license that's referenced in the zoning ordinance. So these private events would not need any zoning approval. So just in terms of the changes, the one change would be to add a definition for annual attraction event. This would, in essence, correspond to what was allowed through amusement license as an annual event in terms of the use. So a conditional use, an annual attraction event, as proposed in the definition, would be an event or attraction that is open or communicated to the public, but excluding religious assembly and private events and attractions which are not open or communicated to the public. So it'd be a one-time event. There would be an amendment to the conditional use chapters for both the county and city regulations, allowing the agricultural attraction, which is currently a conditional, would be deleted and become a special permit. There would be deletion of the amusement license language, which is now defunct or obsolete. And then there would be a special permit for agricultural attraction, and that would include various conditions, one of which would be a minimum lot area of 20 acres, which is currently in the conditional use regulation, so that's not really changing. They would have to submit site information, including access, parking, water, wastewater information. Probably the one notable difference that I would mention between the two versions, the county and city version, would be as far as the traffic aspect. And we did discuss this with the county engineer, but for the city version, so in the Lincoln 3 Mile, there would be a reference to the existing access management policy of the city, and the threshold would be 100 vehicle trips during the peak hour of operation in terms of having to provide a traffic study. As far as the county engineer preferred to have a little more flexibility where they would provide average daily traffic information and then review that. So there's not a specific threshold per se in the county for a traffic study. And so the reason that the two ordinances are very similar, other than perhaps the traffic aspect, is because to promote consistency, that there's not this drastic change when you cross the 3 Mile line into the county, obviously. So with that, I can answer any questions you may have.
Go ahead, Rich.
Application fees for these special permits?
The application fee for the special permit would be the same as any other application fee for special permit. And there'd be no charge for the registration for the annual event matter.
Okay.
Questions? All right, as you are also the applicant, then I think we'll move on to see if there's any testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any testimony in support of this application today? Anyone here who would like to testify in a neutral position, or anyone who would like to testify in opposition?
I would move that we close the public hearing.
Second, fight.
Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Fight?
Yes.
Rodenberg?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
And I would move that we approve text amendment 24012.
Second, fight.
Discussion, we can discuss both applications at the same time.
I think this is a good step forward. With the legislature removing it, this is a good approach for both the city and the county. So I'll be supporting it.
Any additional discussion? All right. Shelley, I think we are ready to take a vote.
Okay. Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Fight?
Yes.
Rodenberg?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
And I'd move to approve text amendment 24013.
Second, fight.
Ball?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Fight?
Yes.
Rodenberg?
Yes.
Ryman Yost?
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
All right, we will now proceed to the action-only items on today's agenda. The public hearing was closed on both of these items, so no additional public testimony will be heard today. There may be additional questions for staff from commissioners in regards to these items. Shelley, will you please call the first action item?
Item 5.1, special permit 24009 for the Landscape Supply Specialist Garden Center on property generally located on the east side of North 56th Street between Bluff Road and Waverly Road. This item is final action and may be appealed to the City Council by filing a notice of appeal with the Planning Department within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. I also will note that the Planning Commission members did receive a staff memo dated December 4th in regard to revisions to the standard conditions for the conditions of approval for special permit 24009, and Planning Commission members did receive a second memo dated December 13th, which provided potential draft amendments for additional conditions of approval as follow-up to the December 4th Planning Commission hearing for special permit 24009.
George Wesselhoff, Planning Department. And so this memo that was just mentioned was follow-up to the last Planning Commission meeting where the commission talked about different options, and we just wanted time to put those in writing as opposed to on the fly. And so just briefly, there were four areas that were discussed. The first was the driveway. You may recall, and I'll put the site plan back on the view here. But you may recall that this special permit has a shared driveway with a residential neighbor to the north. And so there was discussion about that, and the Nebraska Department of Transportation does have jurisdiction from Highway 77 to the property line. So that is acknowledged. And the specific amendment that the commission could consider respective of driveway to improve the traffic flow and separate traffic, residential, commercial, would be to revise the site plan to add a T-shaped or similar driveway design to the east of the property line. So once it gets east of the property line onto the private property, for residential traffic to the north and commercial traffic to the south, up to 40 feet in width and subject to county engineer approval. So again, that's revise the site plan to add a T-shaped or similar driveway design to the east of the property line for residential traffic to the north and commercial traffic to the south, up to 40 feet in width and subject to county engineer approval. The second aspect that was discussed was driveway signage to clarify or give direction, again, to address that there's two different types of traffic that would be involved here. That specific option could read, add a note to the site plan that two directional signs, one for the garden center and one for residential traffic, shall be provided for the driveway entrance east to the property line at the location of the T separation for residential and commercial traffic. A third aspect that was discussed was screening, and the existing special permit requirements contain a requirement for screening if the garden center is adjacent to a residential district. Well, in this case, it is not. However, this specific requirement could be used in this case as an additional option. And this would be a screen that specifically covers at least 60% of the surface area of a vertical plane extending along the entire length of the property line and to an elevation of 10 feet. The screen doesn't, in the design standards, doesn't necessarily need to be vegetative. However, if that's a concern, it could be a condition that it is vegetative, that it's deciduous and evergreens or just evergreen trees. The specific amendment would read as follows, that we're suggesting: revise the site plan to add screening for the garden center area where adjacent to residential lots to the north and south per the design standards, section 7.5, titled Adjacent Land Uses and Zoning Districts of Substantially Different Character. And so just to be clear, it would just apply to the north and south where the garden center use would be located. The east half, roughly, of the site would still be agriculture use. Finally, there was discussion about lighting, and if there would need to be any additional requirements with regard to that. The City of Lincoln does have lighting design standards, and those would be applicable to the 3-mile area. And in double checking with Building and Safety, who enforces the lighting requirements, there wouldn't really be a need for additional conditions. They would still be subject to the same requirements as if they were in the City of Lincoln, if they were a business in the City of Lincoln. That would include regulation for light trespass and fixtures in terms of cutoff, design, et cetera. So there really wouldn't be an option for lighting.
Do people have any questions for Mr. Wessel while he's here before we move on to motions and discussion?
I would move that we approve special permit 24009 with the following conditions, and that would be to include option 1, to revise the site plan to a T intersection and have it 40 foot in width. Number 2, the design driveway signage to include signage directing people to the private residence or to the garden supply. And option 3 on screening, as it is read, except I would add under option condition 3, which says revise the site plan to add screening for the garden center area where adjacent to a residential lots to the north and south per the design standards section 5, titled adjacent land uses and zoning districts substantially different. Screening shall consist of evergreens, pine, spruce, and fir, mixed species every 100 lineal feet, spaced 15 foot apart, with varieties chosen that would provide a 15-foot width at maturity and be 5 foot tall at installation.
Second, fight.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second, so now we can move into discussing both the special permit and the amendment. So the motion is inclusive of all of the amendments.
Well, the main reason in looking at this, I think we asked the questions 2 weeks ago. They've gotten answered with good answers. The only thing I wanted to include was it be evergreen in the screening and to be at least 5 foot in height at the start. And the reason being that would provide, as it matured, 100% screening, both north and south to the residential properties. The other 2 options are fairly self-explanatory and meet what the residential property desired.
Yeah, I would just only state thank you to the planning department for hearing some of the recommendations that we had, as a commission, and also the applicant being willing to agree to that, to put it into this proposal. So thank you.
Yeah, I would second my fellow planning commissioner. Just appreciate the applicant for being willing to chat with the department and listen to residential concerns and make those adjustments.
Any additional discussion? Okay. Shelley?
Ball.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Cruz.
Yes.
Fight.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved as amended, 6-0. Okay, we'll now move to item 5.2, County Special Permit 24036 for the Panama Energy Center to allow for the construction of a large solar energy conversion system in compliance with Section 13.051 of the Lancaster County zoning regulations, a property generally located between West Princeton Road and West Gage Road and from Southwest 29th Street to Highway 77. This item is final action and may be appealed to the county board by filing a notice of appeal with the planning department within 14 days following the action of the planning commission. I will note that planning commission members did receive a staff memo dated December 13th and a second staff memo dated December 17th in regard to special permit 24036.
I wish to make a motion, and if it is seconded, I have 2 amendments that I would like to add to it.
All right.
The motion would be to approve SP 24036.
Second, fight.
My 2 amendments that I'd like to add, Amendment 1, I would move to add the site-specific conditions for the following changes to Steve Hendrickson's memo sent to us on 12/13/2024. Change 1.4 from the setback from 50 foot to 100 foot from the property line for any non-conforming property without a dwelling, and change 1.5 to read on the site plan to change the 100-foot setback to 250-foot setback from the property line of any non-participating property with a dwelling on any side of the property having solar panels. This would include non-participants across the road. They would need to be at least 250 foot back from that property line also. And all the other site-specific amendments would remain as presented in the memo, with the exception that the inverters and the battery-powered storage units should be set back further than the 250 foot wherever possible, and any exception to them being greater than 300 foot would include receiving an approval from the health department.
Okay, we have sorry?
Steve Hendrickson with the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street. If I might, Dick, I think our preference would be that was a rather long amendment. Our preference would probably be to have it split into two parts just so we make sure we have it all straight.
Okay.
So the first part, as I saw it, was about the setback going from 50 feet to 100 feet for a non-participating without a dwelling, and from 100 to 250 feet for a non-participating with a dwelling. If you want to, is there more text on that specific part of it? But I think it'd help us if we did that part first and then had the inverter part second.
Okay.
Okay,
The
so,
memo did include that your setbacks that you had proposed included the inverters and battery storage.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that the first item was just about the setbacks alone.
Okay.
And did not address the inverters.
Got it.
And they were like, and basically this is in reference to a memo that we had for a different solar project, and that had two separate ones. One was about the setbacks, just plain, and then the second one was about setbacks when there are inverters.
Okay.
okay, so just in terms of process, we have a motion, and now we have a proposed amendment, which is to change the site-specific conditions 1.4 and 1.5 regarding the setbacks.
And then
That has
this,
been proposed. We need a motion to consider that amendment. And we'll consider the second part of that amendment will be the second amendment, and then you additionally
would
have
be my-
another amendment, which will be now the third.
that'd be
Okay.
that would be my motion.
Okay, there's the first amendment.
Okay, so second fight.
And then the second amendment then would be that the
We have to discuss that, we have to do each amendment at a time. We have to do one amendment
Okay.
at a time. So we need to discuss this amendment and decide whether or not to amend the motion with this amendment first, and then we'll move to the second. and
Okay.
third.
My reason for proposing
Hold on
this.
just a second, because the attorney is,
Coming out of the office.
Wait. Andrew Barnes, County Attorney's Office. You are correct. You have to discuss each amendment and then vote on each amendment, so.
Okay.
all right, thank you. All right, we will now be discussing,
Ask a clarifying question.
yes,
So-
excuse me.
No, just are the three different amendments, like we're first doing 50 to 100 and then the second one's 100 to 250?
No.
Or is that all
That
combined?
They're in
Okay,
one-
thank
All
you.
one.
So the first amendment is specifically about
Just
the
the
general
setbacks.
setbacks.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you.
And it is 50 to 100 feet for properties without a dwelling, and moving from 100 to 250 feet for those with a dwelling, but it is from the property line is what you have proposed and not from the dwelling.
That's correct.
Okay.
The reason for my amendment is clearly there's many solar projects around the country and such, and many of them have different setbacks. From the testimony we heard 2 weeks ago, I'd like to provide as much of a setback that's reasonable for the non-participating homeowners, and yet still believe that the solar project should be approved.
All right, let's have additional discussion on this amendment.
Well, I do appreciate the extra 2 weeks and that the setbacks were discussed, and I think this is a good thing. Now the county board could come and change those, increase them or decrease them, but I think it shows good faith to give that extra setback to the.
And on the east side of Lincoln, the county did adjust the 100-foot setback to 250 foot.
Yes.
So I proposed to match what they were doing previously.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now, if there is not additional discussion on this specific amendment, we will vote, but it will be only to amend the main motion with this amendment as we have discussed. It doesn't have anything to do with approving of the main motion at this time because we'll have additional amendments to consider. Shelley?
Ball.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Cruz.
No.
Veit.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved with amendments that include the amendments to the setbacks. Approved 5-1.
And my second amendment would be then that the inverters and the battery storage units must be at least 300 foot from the property line of the non-participating homeowner, and that any discrepancy or change to that must be approved by the health department.
Is there a second?
Oh, sorry. Second, fight. I was writing all it down. Thank you.
All right.
And, yeah, so I'll probably have a clarification question. And that's for participating and non-participating?
It'd be for non-participating.
Participating.
I think that if a participating homeowner wished to talk to and make that part of the agreement that they would have, they could negotiate that with the applicant. But the non-participating doesn't have a whole lot of say in things.
All right, additional discussion? Okay, Shelley?
Ball.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Cruz.
No.
Veit.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved 5-1.
And then Amendment 3 would be in Section 13.051A4, Exhibit 1, change the required screen outside the fence surrounding the solar panels, required screening from 4 trees, 3 being evergreen and 1 being deciduous per 100 lineal feet, to require 6 evergreen trees of mixed species of pine, spruce, and fir trees per 100 lineal foot, which will have at least a 15-foot maximum mature diameter and a minimum mature height of at least 18 foot. All trees shall be a minimum height of 6 feet at the time of installation, and any trees that die that must be replaced during the next closest planting season for the duration of the solar farm existence.
Second, fight.
Okay.
I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Basically, again, all I'm looking is to increase the screening for the non-participating homeowners to where it would end up being 100% screen from their view. And the minimum of 18 foot in height is the tallest point at which the solar panel would be if it's straight up and down.
Discussion?
Because I just appreciate the fellow commissioner who has knowledge of these trees and things like that. And I know, coming from a family who lived in an acreage, it's very good to have all these trees at mature height to really help with screening. I think that's beneficial to the homeowners.
And it's a windbreak also. for 'em.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, wind, vision, sound, all of those things. And
Sound, exactly.
I know one of the concerns that was expressed was that if immature trees were planted and were sparsely planted, that it wouldn't really provide much of a screen for a very long time.
Right.
So that does help address that piece of it. All right, Shelley?
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Fight,
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved with proposed amendment 6-0.
All right, before we move on to consideration of the main amendment as amended with these three amendments, does anyone else have any additional amendments to add at this time? Not that we can't continue to add before we vote, but I'm asking if anyone has anything else. Yes, sir.
I just want to thank all the people that have written emails or letters to the Planning Commission. We've had both support and opposition through it. And we've read each and every one of them, including the ones that came in today. That has been very helpful in leading me to try to come up with the best solution possible.
Additional discussion.
I was totally torn, not having my mind made up before I came in today. Read through so many letters. I was concerned about the communication factor. Of course, the setbacks, which we have addressed. How to decommission, fire danger, noise, just the aesthetics and the property value, birds. We've considered all these things. We're not experts on any of these things, but I will echo Commissioner Campbell's thanks that these letters did help. And again, our responsibility here is to, and that of the planning department, is to make sure these things are in compliance with the rules, regulations, codes, and comprehensive plan. They do. I appreciate the extra setbacks. I think that will help. And then it goes on to the county board, and they, where we explained that we can read your letters and hear your testimony of 2 weeks ago, but we're not allowed to be lobbied. We're not allowed to be taken in to conversation one way or the other on these approvals. So the letters did help, and I appreciate that. I'm still a bit torn. I put geothermal. My wife and I have geothermal. I drive a hybrid car. I'm all for renewable energy. But at the same time, I feel that the property owners have rights of some privacy and noise pollution, and I care for the birds, although we did get letters from Wachiska Audubon that were in support of this. So I think if they had concerns for the eagles and the migratory fowl, they would have brought that up at that point. So I was honestly thinking I would be the one no vote and that it would go through, but I'm not so sure now.
I guess I will be supporting this, although I do feel for property owners who are adjacent to the solar panels. I feel for you, I really do. I appreciate fellow Commissioner Campbell for bringing up these text amendments and really trying to find ways to make it a little better. I appreciate that we have this renewable energy project, and I think Mr. Rodenberg nailed it on the head. You know, our job is to follow those rules and regulations set by zoning, and also the property owners who have decided to use their land for the solar panels. That's also their right. So it's very difficult to weigh both of those individuals.
I also am feeling the ambivalence that Commissioner Rodenberg expressed and Commissioner Fike reiterated. I live close to this project. I hike nearby in one of the state parks. I appreciate the water and the beautiful sunsets and sunrises. I appreciate the peace and the quiet and the wildlife. And I also appreciate that we need to consider alternate uses of energy, and we also need to be considerate of the economic impact of this project. I thoroughly wish with every fiber of my being that companies like this would pursue these sorts of solar projects in density areas to begin with. So, for example, why is it that in some parts of the world that these solar panels are put over bus stops or at the top of high-rise buildings or over a parking lot, which we sure have a lot of parking lot that we could have solar panels over? It disturbs me to give up arable, valuable land, agricultural land, to not have it used for agriculture. And so, as I said, I'm truly ambivalent because, you know, part of me wants to be that solar panel wind turbine, you know, hippie. And another part of me so deeply respects the rural landscape and the peace and quiet that that is out beyond the confines of the city. So I'm buying myself time here.
Yeah, I probably not going to say too much more than my fellow commissioners, but this is a tough one for me as well. On a number of fronts. One, just being in the technology industry, we demand power, right? I've also been on the other side of it of being in blackouts and brownouts when there's not enough power or you can't generate, based off of the demand in the area. And we have a growing city. So how do you consider different sources of energy? You know, renewable is definitely one option, and there's other options that aren't necessarily clean. And there's a pro and con to each one of them. But like fellow commissioners stated, that outside of our role on this, we have to take what was given to us from our planning department and really evaluate the regs and the rules of zoning, you know, and make a decision. But I do appreciate the residents communicating to us, providing letters, perspectives. I mean, I think those packages will go to the city council for review so that they can also, you know, look at what our community is stating. And, you know, I think second to that, you know, from a business perspective, implore other companies who come and try to build with projects like this, really take consideration of residents. You know, this project, while it's pretty massive, and you know, based on how it's laid out, it's in a disparate area that is impacting a lot of people. You know, can we be a bit more creative in regards to how that's actually laid out? How can the residents be engaged in a creative way to help their potential displacement and opportunities for them, because it could be a generational thing that's being impacted now. So we have to figure out better ways up front, whether it's, communication. I know we, from a planning department, have a communication to reach out in 2 weeks. If there is a significant project like this, how do we put some language that it needs to be 6 weeks communicated to the community or residents so that this conversation can happen? So I think we can think of ways to get in front of this, because it's not going away, as we grow. But it's a hard one. It's a very hard one, given the scale and given the impact. And I appreciate everyone involved who brought up their voice and their concerns, as well as the planning department who has helped us at least try to find a better way to figure this out.
Just for those that are watching on TV or have testified or written to us, it goes to the county board and not to the city council.
County board.
So it would be appropriate to contact the county board if they have concerns.
Yeah, and everything is a part of the public record. Anything that is submitted does come to the public record. Yes.
And I would implore the county board to look at the setback regulations instead of coming in for future projects and having to work with setbacks, that they look at maybe reestablishing some setbacks so that the developer knows what they're looking at when they come in, and that the landowners are maybe a little more protected from the beginning.
I would just like to, reiterate what my fellow commissioners have said, is that these are incredibly difficult applications that come before us, because we see, hear, and feel the impact that this is having on the individuals, the landowners, and their families. And this one was massive. And I do appreciate that we were able to take 2 additional weeks to think about some potential options for mitigating some of those impacts. I appreciate that there was an additional public meeting that was held, that was announced so that members of the community could attend and participate. And as always, I appreciate the dedication of our planning department staff, who work with such intention and precision to prepare materials, to work with applicants, to interact with our community, to make sure that we have access to good information when we do have to face these challenging decisions. So thank you to everyone on the planning, in the planning department, for their work. I appreciate it very much. I will also agree with what has been expressed here, that again, the role that the Planning Commission is tasked with is to determine whether or not, with the facts that have been presented, an application meets the regulations as they are currently existing for either our city or our county. And in this case, I believe that the applicant in this particular item did meet those application requirements and did prepare significant information in addition to the kind of bare bones to help us be able to look at those things. And then finally, I really appreciate Commissioner Campbell's work to draft amendments that I think have improved what is a difficult special permit to review, but I think these provide some opportunities for mitigation. So I appreciate your work on that. Thank you very much. Is there any additional discussion? Shelley?
All right, Ball,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Cruz,
Yes.
Light,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
At this time, anyone who wishes to speak on an item that was not on today's agenda may do so.
I would move that we adjourn.
Second, fight.
Ball,
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Cruz.
Yes.
Veit.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
We are adjourned.